It all started as a little floater that wouldn't go away. But by the week's end, I had a sizable darkened space where my left peripheral used to be. My doctor was baffled, and the specialists he recommended me to were even more so. I was sitting in the neurologist office when he asked me to describe the darkness.
What does it look like exactly? Does it have any particular shape or discernible features?
I tried again to focus on the black spot. By now, it had changed from a little spot to more of a semi-crescent shape, and it was bigger. Definitely bigger. I turned my attention again to the doctor. It just seems like a little dark shape over the edge of my eye. The doctor pursed his lips. He seemed a little unhappy with that answer.
It could be any number of things, but the optometrist who cleared your physical facilities led me to believe it must be a neurological issue, possibly stress-induced. I'm writing a prescription to help with stress. I'm going to schedule you a follow-up appointment next week.
We said our goodbyes and he ushered me out of the door. I didn't even bother to pick up the prescription, and I probably wouldn't go to the follow-up either. It was clear that modern medicine didn't have any answers for me. No, it was me against this dark spot, and I was gonna figure this out. I started by researching dark-spotted vision, and the results didn't look great. Everything pointed toward physical damage to my eye or neurological damage to my vision. Stress and anxiety began to creep up on me as I exhausted more and more avenues of explanation. I laid in bed, trying to come up with a plan before I had to come to terms with losing my vision entirely, when the spot moved. It was subtle, but undeniable. The spot had moved, and now it rested even further toward the center of my vision. Now slightly more in focus, its shape was somewhat more distinct. It had a sort of blobby, hourglass outline. No longer did it just rest in the corner of my vision. Now it seemed to rest in different places depending on where I was looking. I focused on my bedroom door. There it was in the corner. I focused on the closet. Again, it moved, this time to the back of the closet. The spot also seemed to have grown in size. Now it was at least twice as large as before. Night was falling, and the long day had taken its toll on me, so I decided to try and get some sleep. Maybe things would be better in the morning. But things were absolutely worse in the morning. The spot in my vision was way larger and had even more disturbing behavior. The darkness still seemed to move dynamically around my vision, but now it seemed to actively hide behind doors and furniture. Its movement was far more quick and noticeable now. It glided effortlessly around the environment. I tried to ignore it, but try as I might, I couldn't shake its presence. After dinner, I thought a run would help to clear my head, so I put on my track shoes and headed out the door. Dusk hung heavy in the air, and the cool autumn wind carried the smells of the season. I've always loved fall. Stress seemed to roll off of me, and I started down the sidewalk on my run. I ran and ran, with no purpose or any attention to direction. With every step, I felt a little bit better, and the black spot inexplicably began to shrink in size until I realized I could no longer find it. It began to get dark, so I decided to head home. I rounded the corner to my street, and then I noticed it. There, down the road, was a shadow. From where I stood, it appeared to be leaning out from behind a tree. I looked around, but the spot didn't move. It remained, peering back at me from around the bark. I didn't have a lot of choices. I had to go home eventually, and the shadow stood unwaveringly between me and my house. I took a step forward, hoping that it was a trick of the lighting or some other banal thing. But the shadow remained. As I approached the tree, the shadow's form became more clear. It stood. Its rough hourglass shape had been replaced with a tall and lumbering thing. Its hands and face that reached around the tree to stare at me were formless voids. When I was so close that I could barely stand to take another step, it moved. The hands pulled back behind the tree and the face followed. Where did it go? I ran up to the tree and looked around, but it was nowhere to be found. I searched the whole block. The shadow eluded me. The night was cold, so I headed inside and got ready for bed. When I woke up the next morning, I was completely blind.
So that's all you remember before you lost your vision entirely?
The doctor asked. I heard the clicking of a pen and the furious scribbling stopped. I'm sorry, Doc, but I just woke up blind. I know the whole thing sounds crazy, but something was out there, and it stole my vision. I didn't even know why I was telling him all of this. None of the other doctors had been able to help. Besides, being blind wasn't half as bad as these endless visits and discussions.
All right. Then we have just one last test to perform, and then we'll get you on your way.
The doctor stood and began to prepare the test. He went to his desk and got his otoscope.
If you wouldn't mind just opening your eyes and staring straight forward.
He held the light up to my eye. It was as he feared. In the reflection off of the iris stood an ominous, shadowy figure composed entirely of dark, shifting edges that were difficult to make out, but there could be no doubt. This was the 12th case this week, all with the same tale of a shadowy monster stealing their vision. The doctor shook off a shudder and returned his equipment to his desk.
I'll go get your mom and escort you out. Do you need anything else?
I shook my head. I'd figured as much. These doctors can't fix me.
The doctor left the room, careful to close the door behind him. But just outside the door, I heard the beginnings of a conversation, so I stumbled my way to the door and pressed my ears against the cool wood.
It's the same damn thing. If we don't figure this out soon, we're going to have a real problem on our hands.
A second man responded.
How long do you think he has left?
An uncomfortable silence hung in the air. Finally, the doctor responded.
Not too long. The nightmares haven't started yet, so I guess a week, maybe 2.
The conversation carried on, but the voices were carried further down the hall and out of earshot. My heartbeat pounded in my ears. I had only a week left? What was it that was killing me? I reached up around my now useless eyes, and then I knew what I had to do. The doctors found me sprawled out on the floor, muttering to myself and holding my face. I heard their screaming and felt the paramedics lift me onto a stretcher. But there wasn't anything that could be done. They couldn't reattach my eyes. I made sure of that. The doctors had me in a local hospital under strict surveillance. They were worried I would self-harm again. A stress-induced psychotic break was what they called it. But as the days turned to weeks, and the weeks to months, I knew I had made the right decision. I had survived the shadow. Well, most of me had.